name is Amelia and I am an art teacher with Artists for Kids in the North Vancouver School District. And today I'm going to share with you an artwork and a painting activity. And today my art making space is in my own kitchen. So welcome to my kitchen. So the artist that I'm going to share with you today is a Canadian artist whose name was Gordon Smith. And Gordon Smith lived in West Vancouver for many years, and he was well known for his paintings of BC landscapes. And he had a very distinctive painting style that was very expressive and abstract and realistic at the same time. And he also created sculptures as well as prints. And Gordon Smith was very passionate about arts education and providing arts education opportunities for young people. He was also a very well-loved teacher and mentor to many artists and educators. And he also helped to establish Artists for Kids in the North Vancouver School District, which provides arts education programming and resources like these videos to young people and to teachers. So we have a very special connection to Gordon Smith in the North Vancouver School District. So Gordon Smith actually passed away at the age of 100 just this past January. And on June 18th, coming up soon, it would have been his 101st birthday. So I thought that this would be a good time to look at Gordon Smith's artwork and to create a painting inspired by the work that he created. And so today we're going to think about how can you represent the feeling of a place in a painting, and how did Gordon Smith do this? So today we'll create a painting inspired by Gordon Smith's creative process, and we will also try out using some kind of unusual painting tools. So today we're going to look at a print by Gordon Smith called Pender Harbour. And Pender Harbour is a small, beautiful oceanside community on the Sunshine Coast, not too far from Vancouver. So take a look at this print. What do you notice about this environment? Have you been to a place like this before? What time of day do you think it is in the image? Notice the colors that you see in the sky and the water. I see pinks and blues, yellows, purples, and whites. Have you ever seen these types of colors at sunrise or sunset? And what feeling or mood does this place have? Now look closely at the types of marks and textures that Gordon Smith used to represent the trees. How do you think he created these textures? Gordon Smith often created his artworks by first taking a photo of a place, and he would then print that photo and he would use it back in his studio. And he wouldn't create an exact copy of the photo, but instead he would work directly with his art materials, often paint, and explore different ways that he could use those materials. You'll need some simple materials to create your painting today. Firstly, you'll need a piece of paper. I have this white piece of paper. It's 11 inches by 14 inches, and it's a bit thicker. Because we'll be painting on the paper, we don't want anything too thin because it could tear as we add water to the paper. I've also taped my paper down onto this drawing board so it stays nice and flat as it dries. You'll also need some paints. You could use tempera paint or acrylic paint. I'll be using acrylic paint today. You'll need blue, red, white, and yellow. And you'll also need either black ink or black paint. You'll need a palette, something to mix your paints on. You could use a plastic lid or a plastic plate. You'll also need a narrow stick and a thick stick. You can find these outside. And you'll need a paintbrush. I have a thicker paintbrush and a thinner paintbrush. And you'll also need a water container. Now the first thing we're going to do is take our blue paint and mix it with some water in one of our water cups. And so I added just a little bit of water at a time so I wouldn't water down my paint too quickly, and tested my watered down blue on a little scrap of paper so I could see what it looked like before I added my paint to my bigger piece of paper. So once I got my watered down paint looking like the way I wanted it to be, I'm ready to then paint onto my big piece of paper. And so what I'm doing now is called creating a wash. I'm using a thin layer of watered down paint to cover the whole surface of my paper. And I find it easier to do this with a slightly thicker brush. And my strokes don't have to be totally even. It's okay if some parts end up being a little bit darker and some parts end up being a little bit lighter, but I just want to cover the whole surface of my paper with this wash of light blue. And once I've finished that, I'm going to let my painting dry before I move on to the next step. So the next thing that I'm going to do for my painting, now that the blue wash has dried, I'm going to gather my sticks that I found outside. I have my thicker ones and my thinner ones, and also my black ink, although I could also use black paint at this point. And I'm going to use some pictures that I found of outdoor spaces, kind of similar to the image that we saw in Gordon Smith's Pender Harbor print that we looked at earlier. And so inspired by Gordon Smith's creative process and the way that he would take a photo of an outdoor space and then look at that photo back in his studio, I found some similar images, and these are all places in BC. And if you want to look at these same pictures, you can actually click on the lesson plan that I created. You'll find a link right underneath this video on the Artists for Kids website. And so you could open up that lesson plan, and at the end you will find these same photos. And if you would like, you could look at those as well. So I'm going to keep these near my workspace for inspiration. And next, I'm going to take one of my thicker sticks and I'm going to dip it in my container of ink, and I'm going to use it to draw what's called a horizon line. And I'm going to draw that going right across my paper. And I'm going to draw it not right in the middle and not right at the bottom, kind of in between those spaces, in the kind of bottom third of my paper. So I'm going to pull my stick across the paper like this. And then I'm going to look at some of the images that I have of these outdoor scenes with the water and the sky, and I'm going to draw some little islands on my horizon line. Now I'm going to switch to using my smaller sticks, and I'll choose this one for now. And what I'm going to do now is draw about 8 different tree trunks going from the top to the bottom of my paper. Some might be shorter, some might be longer. And now that I've drawn my trunks, I'm going to start adding some of the details to capture the branches and smaller pine needles, big branches, small branches that I can see in some of these trees. Now, once I have drawn a variety of branches using different kinds of lines going in different directions, maybe looking back at Gordon Smith's artwork for inspiration as well, I'm going to let my ink dry. For the next step in our painting, we can prepare some colors on our palette. I've put out a little bit of white paint, and I mixed together quite a bit of white and just a little bit of my yellow to make this light pastel yellow. And then I did the same by putting down a bit of white paint and then just a tiny bit of red to make my light pink color here. And so now I'm going to think about adding these colors to my painting. And we can look back for a moment at Gordon Smith's print Pender Harbor. And again, notice these colors in the sky and in the water that are kind of shining through the branches that he's created. So inspired by this print, we're now going to add some of these colors to our own painting. So I'm going to take my paintbrush, and this time I'm using a slightly smaller paintbrush so I can add in some smaller details. And I'm going to start with white. And I'm going to think about adding in some patches of white to some of the negative spaces, the spaces around the trees. And then I'm going to move on to yellow and think about where I would like some patches of yellow to come through. And once I've finished my yellow highlights, I'll wash my brush again and squeeze out any extra water from my brush, and then move on to adding some of the pink highlights throughout the sky. So here you can see I've continued to work on my painting, adding in my white and my yellow and my pink to fill in much of the spaces between my different branches and trees, but still allowing some of that blue that we originally painted on the paper to show through as well. Now that my painting is mostly dry, I'm going to carefully remove my tape from the edges like this, and I can take a look at this finished painting. And inspired by some of Gordon Smith's processes and by the colors he used and the types of lines he used in his print, I feel like in some ways with using the stick and the ink, I was able to capture some of the energy and the mystery of the trees in the forest. And also using some of the colors that Gordon Smith does in his print, such as the pastel pink and the light blue and the light yellow and the white, I was also able to capture some of that glowing light that can come through the forest and the trees at the very beginning of the day and the very end of the day, which to me has a feeling of peacefulness or even a bit of magic to it. We can develop new ideas and ways of doing things by carefully observing and learning from the creative processes of other people. So today we looked at an artwork by Gordon Smith and created a painting inspired by his creative process. So you could represent the feeling of another place, perhaps a place that you're more familiar with, such as a view out your window. And you could choose a time of day, take a photograph, and then look at that photograph and represent it in a painting in a similar way and using a similar process to Gordon Smith. We would absolutely love to see the paintings that you have created. You could share them with us on Instagram using the hashtag AFKFromHome. Thank you so much for joining me today, and please do check back for more videos and art activities from Artists for Kids.